Alright guys, welcome back to Mr. Post Frame. I'm standing in front of the build I'm calling the doghouse, and I just looked on YouTube to see when the last video I published on this, and it was 5 months ago. I started probably almost a year ago building this, something that should literally take me a couple weeks, and I don't even have metal on the thing, but we are going to do a show on it today because I have got to get this done. I have done a little since the last video. I've got house wrap on it. I've got windows installed. I've got it all leveled out, compacted, and I got my drain in. So we are going to cover all that stuff today and get this build up to speed. Part of kind of getting myself organized, this is a key to that because I need this to be done to take all of my tools and extra supplies out of my garage and organize them in here. And while I do that, I am going to get rid of a lot of stuff. So I'm pretty excited. I'm hoping to get the concrete in the next couple weeks so that I can move forward. So let's go ahead, jump into it. All right guys, I'm out here back at it. I'm gonna put in, got the building re-squared with my chains, and I'm going to put all this permanent bracing on in all my corners, and then I'm going to hopefully get this thing wrapped today. So we'll see how this goes. All I do for these corners is I lay the 2x6 up in there, and then I climb up and mark. That way I don't have to do any math. I just literally put the brace where I want it, mark it, cut it, put it in there against the girts, and screw it in. I always use 2x6 bracing. I put them in my corners. Every corner I have a brace on each side of that corner. If my building's typically over 64 feet, then I'll add bracing somewhere in the middle bays. If you have windows in those corner bays, then what I do is I just move over to the next available bay to put my bracing in. I like to buy 10-foot long rolls of house wrap. And when I say 10 foot, I mean that is the height of the roll. And the reason I do that is because the way I lay out my girts, it works perfect for me to line the top of that roll of house wrap up with the top of a girt, and that gives me a nice straight line to run it around the building. That way I know that I can get all the house wrap tight. So what I like to do is run it and just attach it to that top girt, and then once I have a side done, work my way across, pulling it down and stapling down one girt at a time, and that way I can get it really straight and without any wrinkles in it. If you have a 2-story building, you're going to probably most likely end up cutting a roll to the length you need it. As you can see on this building, I used a couple different widths up in the top. They were scraps that I had left over, so I just made them work. Important thing is to tape all the seams. House wrap is not a vapor barrier. It is a weather barrier. So what that means is it keeps rain and wind out, but it will still allow your building to breathe. So just keeping that in mind, it's not a vapor barrier, it's a weather barrier. All right, I'm down at the doghouse. Still just sitting with wrap. I've been so busy trying to get all of these builds and things done, but I got a little bit of time today, and I really got to make a big push here in my house to get a bunch of my own stuff done. So I have these 2 windows from a job from like 2 years ago that got changed. So I'm going to throw them in here. I'm going to do that right now. So I'm going to go ahead and get my tape down on my sills, measure, shim it, get these things installed. All right, I put shims in here and put a level across here, so now I know when I put my window in here, the gap's going to be even on the bottom and the top. And then I also do that on the side. That way I can install this window by myself. I never even have to come inside. So we're going to go outside and get this thing in. You want to be whining on film? Kids are making for it with the hitch halter. Look at that. Dual purpose. All right, so when you're installing your windows, I like to put a 2 to 3 degree slant on my sill of my window. I use zip flashing, and the reason I like that slant is because if the window is ever to fail and it starts leaking, it will go down to that zip flashing and it will go out over the house wrap and down the side. Therefore, when you do find out that it's leaking, it hasn't ruined and rotted all of the framing underneath it. As far as flashing, I use the zip flashing tape. I go down each side and then across the top. And the reason I like zip flashing tape is because it sticks. Whether it's really, really cold or it's really, really hot, it sticks, it stays, and if you have to take it off, it starts to peel a layer of your house wrap off. So I'm gonna start digging in my frost protection. I know I said I would never do it this way, but this is super soft. The water's been running down in here. That will not be a problem because my finished grade is gonna actually be way up there by the door. So there's gonna be a lot of gravel that comes in here and it'll slope out and I'll run all that water out the sides. So digging this in by hand is super easy so far, real soft. Right there where the water's washed out, it's actually taking a lot of dirt out of here and gravel. So just ripping this down, putting it in. So as I'm working on this frost protection, let's talk about some questions I get. One question I get a lot of is how deep do you go? Well, if you look at the IRC and you look in the section where it talks about shallow, frost protected shallow foundations is where you want to go in the IRC. This is very similar. Our foundation with the pier system goes below frost, but our slab needs to be protected the same as a shallow foundation. So here in the Midwest where we are at, we're required to go down 14 inches, and it specifically states that in the IRC, and it's based off the air freezing index, which is like a 100-year compilation of how many days it falls below freezing in your area. So if you, even all the way up in Alaska, the farthest you have to go is 16 inches. What changes is whether you need horizontal insulation or not. So here where I'm at, we require no horizontal insulation to protect our slab from frost heave. We've been doing this a long time. I used to go 24 inches until I got clarification from an engineer and explanation on the IRC charts, and we're only required to go 14 inches. So what I do is I take a 16-inch piece of polystyrene and I cut it into 16-inch sections, so I get 16 inches of protection, and I get 3 pieces out of one 4-foot wide section. So when you're backfilling your building, you want to put it in there a few inches at a time, and you want to make sure you compact it. The important thing about a concrete slab and what keeps it from settling is what is below it. So I always try to shoot for a minimum of 6 inches of compacted gravel. That can be 3/4, it can be 1 inch. Other parts of the country, they use a lot of other stuff, but this is very important that this gets compacted. And I know with my compactor, when it starts getting compacted, it wants to start jumping a little bit more because it gets so hard that that compactor is just jumping around. So just make sure you're doing a good job at that. I usually will use a hand compactor where I can't get in around columns or in tight spots, and just pack it down with a hand compactor. All right guys, frost protection is all in. I've got gravel in here, compacted. Now I'm gonna get my string lines and I'm gonna run one from that post to that post, and then I will fine tune this. There are a couple low spots. You can't really tell on camera, but that way I can get it really close. I want a 5-inch slab, And then once I get that bay done, I'll put a string line from that post to this post, do that middle, and then we'll do this outside part. So getting there. That bay over there, I'm not gonna put a drain in, but in the middle of this bay right here, I am gonna put either just a circle drain or a trench, small trench drain, so that when I park my skid steer in here in the winter, the snow can melt off and go out the drain. All right, so this pier is 0. So what I do is I make these little blocks attached to the column. I know that I'm 1.5 inches above where I want my rock to be. So I'll fill it up to about 1/2 inch below, and then by the time I compact it, it'll be down about where I need to be. So attach one there, and I go all the way down, attach one there, and then I can work all the way across. This works pretty good. Gets me pretty darn close. Make sure that's pushed all the way down. This one is plus 5/16, so I know that I want my grade up about 5/16 on this board, so I just adjust my rock accordingly. Alright guys, I'm down here at the doghouse, which has been basically like this for a while. I'm almost ready for concrete. I just got to put insulation down on the floor, but like a lot of you said, I would pour concrete in this whole thing, and that's what I'm going to do. So I want to put a overhead door here to seal this off. There's just too many critters that are going to get in here, so I have to put one more post hole, which I just dug. But look at this tool. This guy at the NFPA gave me this thing. It's a prototype. It's a hole clean out tool, and it actually worked out pretty well. It's just got a little cutting edge here. And I was actually skeptical on how well this would turn, and I'm sure depending on your soil type and stuff like that, but if you have looser soil where or dry soil where you have a couple inches left, this actually would probably work pretty good. I used it on this. It turned way easier than I thought. And look at that. The bottom of my hole is like perfectly clean. Not perfectly, but probably the best that I've ever had. So, right application, something like this might work. I don't know when if he's gonna start making these and putting them into production, but he gave me one. said try it out, and so I did. Actually could come in handy. All right, so round drain versus trench drain. For this building, I just want to drain, so when I'm out plowing snow with my skid steer and I pull it in there and I park it over it, the water will drain and escape. This 6-inch round drain was $50 at Menards, whereas I would spend a lot more money on a trench drain of the quality that I want. I don't want to put a plastic trench drain in a building. I just don't like the fact that they're plastic and how they hold up. The really nice concrete trench drains are really expensive, so in this building I just opted to go with a 6-inch round drain. All right, so I'm putting a round drain in here, running 4-inch pipe out. The only I like these, just not as much work as far as setting the drain. However, it is more work because you usually end up having to dig below, which is nice also because then your insulation goes over the top of it. But how I figure this is 1/8 inch per foot. So the door is 16 foot wide, so I'm going to go out 8 feet each way. So that is 1 inch of drop. So how I am figuring that out is I'll set my laser to the door because that is the height of my finished concrete. All right, so now that I did that, what I'm going to do is bring this up 1 inch. So I'm at 6 3/8. I'm gonna come up to 7 3/8. That way I know that drain is down 1 inch, and that will give me 8 feet of slope around that whole drain. So we're gonna go ahead, check it. About a 16th below that, so that's perfect. Next thing I'll check, which I already know I got like an inch of drop here on my pipe. Check it here. So going downhill, I'm going to level this. And now we can backfill this and get it compacted. All right, guys, that is going to be a wrap on today's show. I know it covered a lot of different things, but being that my last video was 5 months ago, I had to get caught up. As you can see behind me, I have all of the insulation down now. Concrete's getting poured on Friday. So I'm going to keep moving this build series forward because I got to get it done. So I think things are going to happen pretty quickly because I got my garage doors are in. They're ready to be installed once the concrete's in. Then I can get metal on, get it insulated, all that stuff. So I'm going to really try to push hard to get this done because, like I said, it's kind of the catalyst. Like, once this is done, then I can clean my garage out. Once that's done, it allows me to do other things. So we appreciate you guys watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, share us with your friends, and always, we'll catch you on the next video.